Welcome to Crime Canvas, where we examine the stories that shake us to our core and force us to question what we think we know about human nature. Before we begin tonight's story, if you appreciate deep investigations into real crimes that changed lives and laws, subscribe to Crime Canvas and join our community seeking truth in the darkest corners of human behavior. The presidential suite looked nothing like a place where love should end. Shattered champagne glasses mixed with blood across marble floors worth more than most homes. A crimson wedding sari, torn and stained, draped across furniture that cost a year's salary. Rose petals everywhere, but these weren't symbols of romance anymore. They marked the scene of something far more terrible. At 2:17 in the morning on March 22, 2020, Priya Kaur stood on the balcony of the Park Hyatt, Sydney. She was 27 years old, still wearing her blood-soaked wedding clothes, staring down at the courtyard 16 floors below. Her husband of 6 hours, Vikram Malhotra, lay motionless on the pavement. His black wedding suit scattered with the same rose petals that decorated their ceremony earlier that evening. This should have been the beginning of their life together. Instead, it became the moment their criminal partnership ended in the most violent way imaginable. Priya and Vikram weren't ordinary newlyweds. For 3 years, they ran Australia's largest marriage fraud operation. They destroyed hundreds of lives, stole millions, and pushed desperate people beyond their breaking point. Some victims couldn't survive what was done to them. But on their wedding night, everything collapsed. Priya discovered that Vikram planned to betray her completely. He would frame her for everything while he escaped to start fresh in another country. Their marriage was supposed to protect them legally from years of crime. Instead, it became the scene of murder. The woman who built her fortune destroying marriages became a widow on her wedding night. This time the blood was real. This time someone was actually dead. To understand how a wedding ended in murder, you need to know how Priya Kaur became one of Australia's most dangerous criminals. Priya arrived in Sydney in 2017 as a 22-year-old student from Punjab, India. She came to study business management, but within months she was failing every class and running out of money to stay in the country. That's when she discovered something far more profitable than any degree. She learned how to weaponize loneliness. Within 18 months, this struggling student built a criminal operation worth $15 million. Her business was devastatingly simple. She sold fake marriages to anyone willing to pay $75,000. Here's how it worked. Priya found two types of people. First, desperate immigrants who needed permanent residency but had no legal path to get it. These people would sacrifice everything to stay in Australia. Second, lonely Australians who craved companionship or needed money so badly they'd do anything to get it. She matched them together, collected enormous cash payments, and created elaborate fake love stories to fool immigration officers. But Priya wasn't just opportunistic. She was a master at reading people. She studied weakness like others study textbooks. She identified exactly what someone needed to hear, what they desperately wanted to believe, and she gave them that fantasy until their money was gone. From her luxury apartment in Bondi, one of Sydney's most expensive neighborhoods, she ran this operation like a legitimate corporation. Her walls displayed photos of smiling couples, but every single relationship was purchased. She operated multiple phones with different identities to manage her expanding network. She wore expensive designer brands and drove luxury cars to project success and trustworthiness. To the outside world, she appeared to be a successful immigration consultant helping people find love across cultural boundaries. In reality, she was systematically destroying lives for profit, and she felt nothing for the people she hurt. But Priya couldn't manage this massive operation alone. That's where Vikram Malhotra entered the picture. Vikram had arrived in Australia a year before Priya in 2016. Unlike her, he came legitimately as an IT professional trying to build an honest career. He had a stable job, paid his taxes on time, and followed every rule carefully. But when his work visa hit unexpected complications and he faced deportation, everything changed. Desperation made him vulnerable. That's when Priya found him. She didn't just solve his immigration problem. She transformed him into her criminal partner. Vikram became the enforcer of the operation. While Priya charmed victims and crafted believable love stories, Vikram handled everything dark. He intimidated people who tried to back out of their fake marriages. He forged official documents with disturbing skill. He moved stolen money through shell companies to hide their crimes from authorities. The two fell into a relationship built entirely on shared criminality. They made millions together, lived in luxury together, even shared a bed. But they never truly trusted each other. Both were constantly looking for ways to betray their partner when the moment was right. While Priya presented herself as a caring matchmaker to clients, Vikram worked in complete secrecy. He maintained a sophisticated document forgery setup where he created fake passports, marriage certificates, and financial statements. He was already communicating with criminal lawyers in Canada, planning his eventual escape. He even obtained a forged passport with a completely new identity, ready to use when needed. But the real tragedy wasn't their eventual betrayal of each other. It was what they did to innocent people along the way. Let me tell you about the real cost of Priya and Vikram's crimes. These weren't just financial transactions. They were calculated destructions of human lives. Sarah Williams was 32 years old, a primary school teacher who loved her students and believed in second chances. She fell for one of Priya's schemes after her divorce left her lonely and vulnerable. She paid her entire life savings, believing she was investing in a real future with someone who cared about her. When the scam collapsed, she lost her house and attempted to take her own life. She survived, but she says part of her died that day anyway. Ravi Sharma was a 26-year-old engineer from India with a brilliant mind and a bright future. He paid everything his family owned for a fake marriage that Priya promised would be permanent and safe. When immigration exposed the fraud, he was deported and blacklisted from ever returning to Australia. His career was destroyed. His family's trust was shattered. The Patel family sold generations of farmland in India to pay for their son's fake marriage. When everything fell apart, they lost not just their money but their ancestral home. They became homeless. The father still cries when he talks about what happened. James Morrison was 43 years old, a widower still grieving his wife who died from cancer. He was lonely beyond words and desperate for companionship. Priya manipulated him into paying his entire pension savings for a relationship she knew was completely fake. It left him financially devastated and emotionally broken. He says he'll never trust anyone again. These weren't isolated incidents. Priya and Vikram arranged over 200 fake marriages. They stole millions of dollars. They lived like royalty while their victims suffered in poverty and despair. Some victims became so hopeless after losing everything that they couldn't see any way forward. They ended their own lives. For 3 years, Priya and Vikram got away with all of it. But their success was about to become their biggest liability. By January 2020, Priya and Vikram's perfect criminal empire was crumbling. The easy money and luxury lifestyle were ending, and danger was approaching from every direction. Detective Sarah Chen from the Australian Federal Police had been quietly investigating them for months. She was brilliant, determined, and specialized in immigration fraud. She knew exactly what Priya and Vikram were doing, and she was building an airtight case. Chen led a special task force called Operation Fake Love that included police officers, immigration officials, and financial crime experts. They were all working together to dismantle the entire network. The investigation was meticulous. Undercover agents watched their movements. Bank accounts were monitored continuously. Phone calls were recorded. Victims who had been too frightened or ashamed to speak up before were finally coming forward with their stories. The pressure was becoming unbearable. Every day brought more evidence against them. Every week another victim contacted authorities. The trap was tightening and both criminals knew it. Making things worse, the Immigration Department had just implemented a new artificial intelligence system that could identify fake marriages by analyzing patterns in applications and interviews. This technology was revolutionary. It could process thousands of applications and spot the telltale signs of fraud that human officers might miss. Suddenly, couples that Priya had carefully coached were getting caught during official interviews. Immigration officers were asking harder questions that exposed the rehearsed answers. The fake love stories that used to work reliably were now falling apart under scrutiny. Priya's success rate dropped catastrophically from 95% down to less than 30%. The money that used to flow constantly was now just a trickle. But the authorities weren't the only threat hunting them. By February 2020, Sydney's Indian community had turned completely against them. Word had spread through the tight community about what Priya and Vikram were really doing. Families were discovering that their relatives had been scammed and financially destroyed. The community's reaction was immediate and harsh. The local Sikh temple banned them from religious services. Community centers refused to allow them at cultural events. Their names became toxic throughout Little India. Nobody wanted any association with them. It became frightening. Angry families of victims started making serious death threats. They knew where Priya and Vikram lived. They knew their routines. Some victims' relatives had lost everything and blamed the criminals for destroying their futures. These weren't empty warnings. These were desperate people with nothing left to lose. Social media amplified everything. Victims and their families posted photos of Priya and Vikram online, warning others about their scams. Facebook groups and WhatsApp chats spread their pictures with detailed stories about the lives they had destroyed. They couldn't walk down any street without being recognized, confronted, or threatened. The breaking point came when news reports started connecting multiple deaths directly to their marriage fraud network. 3 victims had taken their own lives after losing everything. The media called them Australia's most evil couple. Marriage scam murderers who drove people beyond hope. Both criminals realized they were running out of time. The police investigation was close to making arrests. The community wanted revenge. Their income had almost completely disappeared. They needed an escape plan immediately. That's when they both had the same idea. Marry each other. A real marriage between them would create something called spousal privilege under Australian law. This meant they couldn't be forced to testify against each other in court, which would make it extremely difficult for prosecutors to build a strong case. It would also make their shared criminal assets harder for the government to seize since married couples have special legal protections for joint property. Even better, they could present their wedding as a redemption story for the media. 2 former criminals who found real love and decided to reform. It might generate some public sympathy and give them breathing room with both the community and the legal system. So in March 2020, they announced their engagement to the world. To everyone watching, it looked genuinely romantic. 2 people who had done terrible things but found love through their shared experiences and were now ready to go straight and build a legitimate life together. The announcement received positive media coverage. Some people in the community thought maybe they really had changed. Even some victims' families wondered if this meant they might finally receive compensation for what was stolen from them. But behind the scenes, both Priya and Vikram were secretly preparing their own individual escape plans. Neither one intended to honor this marriage beyond the immediate legal protection it would provide. Vikram had been quietly contacting criminal networks in Canada who could help him disappear with a new identity. He had been transferring money to hidden offshore accounts that Priya didn't know existed. His plan was straightforward. Marry her for the legal benefits, then vanish to Canada, leaving her to face the authorities alone. Priya was equally calculating. She had been exploring escape routes to the United Kingdom through forged documents and criminal contacts there. She had her own secret stash of money and detailed plans to disappear, leaving Vikram to take the blame for everything they had done together. Both thought they were smarter than their partner. Both believed they could execute the ultimate betrayal. Neither realized that the other person was planning exactly the same thing. As their wedding day approached, they were both living double lives even within their criminal partnership. Their marriage was never meant to be real. It was just another fraud. But this time they were deceiving each other. March 22, 2020 was supposed to be the perfect wedding day. Instead, it became the day 2 criminals tried to outsmart each other with deadly consequences. The wedding took place at Crown Casino Sydney, one of the city's most expensive venues. Because of COVID restrictions, only a small group could attend, which actually worked perfectly for Priya and Vikram. They didn't have real family or friends who would come anyway. Most people in their lives either hated them or had cut them off completely. Since their real families back in India had disowned them after learning about their crimes, they hired professional actors to play the role of loving relatives. These actors had no idea they were participating in a fake family reunion for 2 criminals. They were just paid to smile, cry happy tears, and make the wedding look legitimate for the cameras. Professional photographers documented what the media was calling their redemption love story. The pictures would be used to show the world that 2 bad people had found each other and were now reformed and happy. Every smile, every kiss, every tear was carefully staged for maximum public sympathy. But what nobody knew was that while they posed for these romantic photos, both bride and groom were secretly planning to kill each other after the ceremony ended. The wedding ceremony itself was beautiful to observe. It was a traditional Sikh ceremony with all the proper decorations, music, and religious rituals. Priya wore a stunning red and gold outfit that cost more than most people earn in a year. Vikram looked handsome in his black suit with a traditional turban. They said emotional vows about loving each other forever, about standing together through good times and bad, about being faithful until death. The small crowd of community members who attended wiped away tears listening to their promises. These people genuinely believed they were watching 2 criminals who had found redemption through love. But every word was a complete lie. While they spoke about loving each other forever, both were thinking about how to eliminate the other person as soon as possible. Even their wedding rings were part of their deadly plans. Both contained tiny GPS tracking devices so they could monitor each other's movements. The ceremony looked perfect from the outside, but it was really just 2 murderers getting married for legal protection while planning each other's deaths. The real crisis started during the evening reception. That's when both criminals began discovering the truth about what their new spouse was really planning. Priya was in the bathroom when she overheard Vikram talking quietly on his phone. He was speaking to someone in Canada, and even though he was trying to keep his voice down, she caught enough words to understand what was happening. He was talking about moving the timeline up and eliminating the problem permanently. She realized with absolute horror that he was talking about killing her. When she came out of the bathroom, she started looking through his things more carefully. In his jacket pocket, she found official documents, but they were all in his name only. There was no mention of her anywhere. These were immigration papers for Canada, bank account transfers, even a new passport application. Everything was prepared for him to disappear alone. She checked their shared bank accounts on her phone and discovered that over the past month, Vikram had been secretly moving their money to offshore accounts that only he could access. Millions of dollars that should have been theirs together was now under his control only. The horrible truth hit her like a physical blow. He wasn't just planning to abandon her. He was planning to frame her for all their crimes, take all their money, and then kill her to ensure she could never expose him. But Vikram was making his own terrifying discoveries that same night. While Priya was distracted talking to wedding guests, he went through her purse and found her phone unlocked. The message history showed months of secret communication with criminal contacts in the UK. People discussing new identity papers, permanent solutions, and making problems disappear forever. Then he found something that made his blood run cold. Hidden inside her heavy traditional necklace was a small glass bottle. When he carefully opened it and smelled the contents, he recognized it immediately. It was poison. Fast-acting, hard to detect, and deadly within hours. She was planning to kill him, probably during their honeymoon when they would be alone together. She would poison his food or drink, make it look like a heart attack or sudden illness, and then inherit everything as his grieving widow. Both criminals now knew the awful truth. The person they had just married, the person they had worked with for 3 years, the person who was supposed to be their partner, was planning to murder them. At 11:30 that night, they went to their luxury honeymoon suite at the Park Hyatt Sydney. The room cost $50,000 for one night and had everything. Expensive champagne, roses everywhere, chocolate-covered strawberries, and an incredible view of the entire city. To anyone watching, they looked like the happiest newlyweds in the world. They took romantic photos for social media, kissing and laughing and looking completely in love. But it was all performance. Both were acting while secretly planning how to kill the other person first. What nobody watching could see was that both had hidden weapons throughout the expensive hotel room. Priya had taped a kitchen knife under the bathroom sink. Vikram had hidden a gun behind the books on the shelf. As the night went on, their conversation became a careful battle of words. They spoke in code, making threats that sounded like love talk to anyone listening. They were both drinking heavily, which made them braver but also more careless. Each was trying to figure out exactly how much the other person knew. Each was waiting for the perfect moment to strike first. At 1:45 in the morning, the pretending finally stopped. "I know about Canada," Priya said coldly, throwing the forged documents at Vikram's face. Her voice was completely different now. Gone was the sweet bride from earlier. This was the real Priya, the criminal mastermind who had destroyed hundreds of lives without feeling any remorse. "I know about the secret bank accounts. I know you've been moving our money where I can't touch it. I know you were planning to abandon me and leave me here to rot in prison while you start your perfect new life." Vikram didn't even try to deny it. He was done lying too. Instead, he calmly reached into his jacket and pulled out the small poison bottle she had hidden in her wedding jewelry. "Really? You want to talk about betrayal?" he said, holding up the bottle so she could see it clearly. "I found this in your necklace. Were you planning to poison me on our honeymoon? Make it look like I had a heart attack while we were celebrating our new marriage?" He grabbed her phone from the bed and showed her the screen with all her secret messages to criminals in the UK. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across the luxury hotel room. 3 years of working together. 3 years of making millions through crime. And it all came down to this. Two criminals who had never really trusted each other finally admitting they were both planning murder. At 2 in the morning, the fight turned to money. That's when things became truly violent. "Those offshore accounts belong to me," Priya screamed, grabbing her laptop and frantically trying to access their shared criminal funds. "I built this whole business from nothing. I found the victims. I created the fake love stories. I made all the plans. Our business," Vikram shot back, pulling out his own computer and trying to lock her out of the accounts. "I did all the dangerous work that you were too scared to do. I threatened people when they wanted out. I forged all the documents. I moved the money around so we wouldn't get caught. Without me, the police would have arrested you years ago. Then Vikram's phone started ringing. The caller ID showed Detective Chen's name. It was 2:10 in the morning. Way too late for a normal phone call. Vikram answered it and put it on speaker. He didn't care anymore if Priya heard everything. "This is Detective Chen from the Australian Federal Police," the voice said. "We're conducting major arrests tomorrow morning starting at 6. We have enough evidence to charge both of you with fraud, money laundering, and multiple counts of manslaughter for the people who committed suicide because of your scams." Both criminals went completely white. They stared at each other in horror. "I'm calling to give you one last chance to cooperate with our investigation," Detective Chen continued. "The first person to come in and confess gets a deal and a reduced sentence. The other person gets life in prison with no possibility of parole." She hung up without saying goodbye. Priya and Vikram looked at each other across the hotel room. After 3 years of partnership, after getting married just hours earlier, it came down to this simple choice. Kill your business partner or spend the rest of your life in prison. Priya moved first. At 2:15 in the morning, she grabbed the knife she had hidden earlier in the wedding flower arrangements and lunged straight at Vikram. He saw it coming just in time and rolled away, grabbing an expensive champagne bottle to defend himself. They fought throughout the luxury hotel suite. Beautiful furniture got smashed into pieces. Wedding decorations were torn apart and scattered everywhere. Blood started splattering on the white walls and expensive carpet. The violent struggle moved toward the balcony that overlooked Sydney's downtown area. The city lights sparkled beautifully 16 floors below them, but neither criminal was looking at the view. Priya was trying to push Vikram over the railing. Vikram was fighting back, trying to grab the knife from her hands, but the balcony floor was slippery from spilled champagne and blood from their fight. Then it happened. Vikram lost his footing and slipped. He grabbed onto the balcony railing, but his hands were sweaty and bloody from fighting. He was hanging 16 floors above the concrete courtyard, held up only by his grip on the metal railing. "Help me," he gasped, looking up at Priya with fear in his eyes for the first time. "Please, we can work this out. We can both run away together. Just pull me up." Priya stood there looking down at him. She had a choice to make. She could reach down and save the man she had worked with for 3 years, the man she had just married, the man who knew all her secrets. Or she could let him fall and solve all her problems at once. At 2:17 in the morning, she made her decision. Instead of helping him up, Priya lifted her foot and stepped down hard on Vikram's fingers where they gripped the railing. "This is for trying to betray me," she said coldly. His grip broke instantly. Vikram Malhotra fell 16 floors, screaming all the way down until he hit the hotel courtyard with a sound that Priya would never forget. Their criminal empire was finally over. But so was Priya's freedom. She had just murdered her business partner on their wedding night, and there was no escaping what she had done. Epilogue: The Aftermath. When the sun came up on March 22nd, Detective Chen arrived at the Park Hyatt Sydney to investigate what would become one of Australia's most shocking crimes. Priya was sitting calmly in the hotel lobby, still wearing her blood-stained red wedding sari. Her story was simple and rehearsed. It was a terrible accident. We were celebrating our wedding on the balcony with champagne and Vikram got too close to the railing. He slipped and fell. I tried to grab him, but I couldn't reach him in time. She even managed to cry real tears while telling this story. But Detective Chen had been hunting these two criminals for months and knew exactly how manipulative they could be. The hotel room looked like a war zone. Furniture was smashed, blood was splattered on walls, wedding decorations were destroyed. Most importantly, the hotel's security cameras had recorded everything. The footage showed the brutal fight, the struggle on the balcony, and the moment Priya deliberately stepped on Vikram's fingers as he begged for help. Faced with video evidence of cold-blooded murder, Priya finally broke down and told the truth. But she didn't just confess to killing Vikram. She confessed to everything. Her confession opened the door to the biggest criminal investigation in Australian immigration fraud history. Over the next week, police conducted raids across the entire country. They arrested 47 people who had been part of Priya and Vikram's criminal network. The investigation revealed that their network was much bigger than anyone had realized. They had arranged over 500 fake marriages, stolen more than $50 million from victims, and had connections to similar criminal operations around the world. But the money was nothing compared to the human damage they had caused. Police confirmed that 8 people had taken their own lives after being destroyed by Priya and Vikram's scams. Over 300 families had been financially ruined. Priya's trial began in April 2020 and lasted 9 months. Every day, the courtroom was packed with victims and their families who had traveled from across Australia and India to see justice done. The charges against Priya were severe. First-degree murder, 327 separate counts of immigration fraud, money laundering involving $50 million, and causing death by criminal negligence. The verdict came in January 2021. Guilty on every single charge. Judge Patricia Williams said she had never seen such a complete lack of remorse from any defendant. You built your fortune by destroying the most fundamental human need, the need for love and connection, she told Priya during sentencing. You showed no mercy to your victims, and this court will show no mercy to you. Priya was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. 4 years have passed since that bloody wedding night. Priya sits in maximum security prison, locked in solitary confinement 23 hours a day for her own safety. She's tried multiple times to appeal her sentence, but every court has said no. Sarah Williams, the teacher who tried to take her own life, has rebuilt her existence and now helps other fraud victims. She speaks at schools warning people about marriage scams. Ravi Sharma's family never recovered. They lost their farm and became homeless in India. His father died last year from stress-related illness. James Morrison never found love again. At 47, he lives alone and says he'll never trust anyone enough to get married. The Australian government completely rebuilt their immigration system to prevent similar scams. Criminal penalties for marriage fraud were increased to life imprisonment. The Indian-Australian community also changed dramatically. Temples and community centers now have strict verification processes for any marriage arrangements. Support groups meet regularly to help fraud victims heal from their trauma. There's now a memorial for the 8 people who took their own lives because of the scams. Every March 22nd, there's an awareness day warning others about marriage fraud. Priya and Vikram turned marriage into a weapon, destroying hundreds of innocent lives for money. Their wedding night proved that criminals who build empires on betrayal will always betray each other in the end. The luxury is gone. The money is gone. What remains is a lesson that echoes through time. Those who profit from destroying other people's dreams will find their own dreams becoming deadly nightmares. If this story affected you, if it made you think about trust and betrayal and the lives damaged by those who see other people as nothing more than opportunities, subscribe to Crime Canvas. We tell these stories not for entertainment but because they matter. Because the victims deserve to be remembered. Because understanding how crimes happen is the first step in preventing them from happening again. Thank you for watching Crime Canvas.